But so, Bob, this is obviously going to be a very challenging thing for me. I'm a big running back guy. I believe that the running backs are the foundation of every team in which you make for fantasy. And you're basically telling me to try to build a team with sand. And it's going to be a hard concept for me to have to deal with. Being at the turn here, and you've already taken, I look at this receiver run that's going on here. I feel like I might have to take a quarterback if you put this handicap on me that I can't take a running back until the 5th round. And just already looking downfield, just hoping who I might be on the bus at 5-1. I mean, I'm just hoping Swift's going to be there.
Now you'll see in where I just picked, I like Olave a lot. I could have taken Garrett Wilson. I could have taken T. Higgins. I could have taken Devonta Adams. But knowing where you're at and knowing you like a guy and knowing that he could perform at similar capabilities as those other players, I think it's easier for me to root for Olave than it is for me to root for Garrett Wilson.
Sure.
Just as a fan more so than anything else. Yes, it's considered a reach if you take Olave there. But realistically speaking, it might not be when it comes to the end of the year. And you weren't going to get him on the way back. So if you wanted him, you have to take him. And that's kind of the thing you have to concern yourself with when you're looking and drafting and your next pick is like more than 10 picks away.
Sure.
You've got to be cognizant of that fact.
Well, let's dive into Olave overall. I mean, he's one of my favorites. I absolutely love him, but I tend not to take him because I'm so heavy on my running back game. But it's a vertical passing set in New Orleans. He had a great rookie year with a quarterback who could not put the ball downfield at all. Mm-hmm. And Olave is a great down-the-field receiver. So when we look at what it is that Olave could bring to the table, it's quite a lot of goodness. And I'm going to have to take T. Higgins. And on my pick on the other turn, I'm also going to take Hurts. I think Hurts overall has a chance of being the best quarterback in the NFL.
I thought you were going to go Devonta Smith there.
I considered it. Obviously, he's his toy. I think Hurts is going to be the best quarterback for fantasy in the league this year for two main reasons. The first is Hurts gives you that opportunity for running touchdowns in a way that Mahomes does not. Mm-hmm. The bigger thing is the NFC is just so much softer. And when we look at the AFC East playing the AFC West, half of your schedule is either your division or the other conference team. Mm-hmm. And I don't like how Mahomes and Allen have to play those. Now, granted, it's a lot of shootouts when we look at the way that the AFC East is built. Mm-hmm. But the way that Kansas City plays their own division, like you look at what 2 games they played against Denver last year, Mahomes did not do that great.
Yeah.
And Mahomes, to me, knowing that Kansas City wants to become more of a running team, I just have Mahomes as my third quarterback behind Hurts and Allen.
Yeah, I mean, Hurts, logistically speaking, out of those top 3 quarterbacks, I think Hurts on a week-to-week basis is going to be a little bit more volatile than Patrick Mahomes is. Mm-hmm. Patrick Mahomes is steady in the passing game. That's what he does. And if you're looking,
especially with Kelsey,
if you're looking for just passing touchdowns, Patrick Mahomes is your guy. I value Josh Allen a little bit lower than those 3. I actually don't think he'll end up as the top 3 quarterback this year in fantasy. I think that because they're designed, they're going to try to protect him a little bit more close to the red zone. You're going to see a lot of those rushing plays go down for Josh Allen. I'm not saying he's going to be lesser of a passer this season, but I think that if you're looking for last season's numbers or the year before that, I think you might be a little bit disappointed in what Josh Allen's going to do. Hurts, I mean, let me make my pick.
Bob, I hate this rule you put up on me.
It's a tough rule, but I've seen a lot of people doing this, and so I wanted to do it.
Yeah, we'll see what the team looks like because there's a number of guys in the league right now who do not have a running back, and the argument is to start in the 5th round. We'll see what it looks like. Just again, I believe that
the enigma of DeAndre Hopkins in this scenario here, the enigma of DeAndre Hopkins, where he's going to land. If you have him as a 2nd or 3rd wide receiver, you could be getting dividends if you're drafting this early in the year, because he's going in the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds in some places. I think he's better than Deebo Samuel will be.
Well, this is why you shouldn't do your draft at this time of the year.
Yeah, I think he's better than Deebo Samuel will be. I think there's a lot of players better than Deebo Samuel, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah.
I consider Joe Burrow there, but I think with the way this is set with 2 wide receivers and a flex, and not going wide receiver in the first round and going Kelsey in the first round, I definitely think I had to take a wide receiver there rather than quarterback, because I think there's still going to be some value at quarterback. Now, you're going to get the best of the rest of these running backs here. It's not going to be the best of the best.
It's going to be Madison. I'm going to be taking Madison. And there goes my guy I wanted a receiver with Scary Terry.
So when you do a draft like this where you're going with either 3 wide receivers and a positional player that's not running back, you're digging in yourself into a little bit of a hole, Joe and I think. Now, not a lot of other people think this, that it is a hole, but there is a very vast difference between the top half of this running back board and the bottom half of this running back board.
Sure is.
And even in the middle of this running back board, people are telling you that these guys are going to be good. And there's a lot of question marks about some of these running backs. Joe Mixon, number 1. He could be a number 1 running back for you.
Could be great.
Could be great. But the legal situation is not something that you really want to invest your time in at this point in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Madison is probably the only guy I would take that's at this point. Same with Dobbins. Pierce, I think, is just going to suck, to be honest.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward.
It's not really a blessing with
anything with Houston. I mean,
yeah, being serious there.
Dude, Cam Akers is up to the 5th round now. I remember when he was a 7th rounder when we started this. He just took my boy DeAndre.
And Cam Akers is another enigma. He got sat last year. He sat on the bench
for
a couple of weeks. Coaches didn't like what he was doing. End of the year, he comes out and he starts performing in the same way that some other players who came out at the end of last year started performing as well. But it wasn't performing to running back 1 numbers. And I think that's what needs to be said is that.
Well, the Rams line was so bad last year.
He had 1 game of 34 points. Pardon me. But for the most part, it's not really running back 1 numbers. And if you go wide receiver heavy and you're relying on Cam Akers as your 1 or your 2, I think you're going to be a little bit disappointed this year. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad year. I just think it will be disappointing for you because I don't know if the production – let's take, for example, this guy who drafted Lamb, Wilson, and Ridley. I don't know if the production is going to be there for those 3 players outside of Lamb to take a gamble on Akers at that point in time.
But you have to, though, because you don't have a running back. That's the problem.
But I'm saying taking a gamble on taking Garrett Wilson over, let's say, Nick Chubb.
That's the part that I think that people are going to have to realize when it comes point and shove. Like, obviously, we're trying to make our teams now here with this role of you don't take a running back in the first 4 rounds. And it's incredibly challenging because there's a couple studs you want on the back end. You took 2 of them in Swift and Pacheco. I look at the remaining running backs available. I got Kamara, White, and then backups. So,
and if you look at the wide receivers,
I'm going to be banking on Tampa-based running back this year without a passing game around them.
And this is the point that we need to put out there for everybody is that people are telling you there is a running back or there's a wide receiver dead zone in this 4th to 6th round,
and they're lying.
And I've got to tell you that is not correct.
It's not. There's the running back dead zone.
The running back fall off after the 3rd round. And
incredible.
I'm gonna group Jones and Walker in that discussion. Same with Dobbins, because the fact remains that DK Metcalf and Kelvin Ridley, while they have the talent to be top notch for you, I'm worried about not taking a running back that high. And yeah, people are telling us that running back is the most volatile position in fantasy football. Yes,
it's not.
It is volatile.
No, because you're going to get the volume.
Listen, the position itself is volatile. You want to make sure you have the volume guys. But people are saying it's volatile because of the injuries. And
that's true.
That is the strict point that I'm trying to prove is that it's a good idea to stock up on players that might get that at a position that might get injured more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like absolutely. That's why I took That's why I took Robinson out in Washington. Robinson is the main ball carrier in Washington, and you know he's going to be getting the rock consistently. Now, Kamara, assuming he doesn't get put in jail, is going to be getting the ball consistently. And when we look at this, saying, I'm basically at a spot now where I'm just going to be drafting backup running backs from the 8th round on. So I might as well just not do it and then stream them later in life. I mean, that's how I feel. What is the difference between me getting Jared Cook now, who's not going to be the primary ball carrier in Buffalo because Josh Allen's the primary runner there, or getting whoever emerges as the true running back in a situation like Denver? Like I'm going to be streaming it regardless.
Yeah.
I say Denver as you take Denver's slated guy, because this is such the hard spot if you neglect running backs early. Sure, we look at my starting lineup right now. Jefferson, Higgins, Hurts, Kittle, Mixon, and Kamara. That sounds good, but there's not an ounce of depth that can be made at the running back position. Whereas I look at the guy who is second last in this draft, Henry, Taylor, Walker, all of the receivers he's going to get now are just going to be super depth because he doesn't need a depth running back. There's so much value in stocking up on the running backs as people are neglecting the position. Not to mention, I have absolutely zero trade assets on my roster right now.
Absolutely.
Nothing. And I have to hope that I hit home runs from the 8th round on to have someone worth trading. That's not a position of power. That's not how you win leagues.
Yeah, and what we were speaking of, if you're catching our drift, what we're throwing down here is that, yes, a lineup of Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams is going to produce for you a lot of the time. But when you're sitting there and your second running back is Rachaad White,
it's not sexy.
It's definitely not something that, you look at and you say, yeah, Rachaad White could be productive, as I just took Mike Evans. But, Tampa Bay, there's a lot of question marks in Tampa Bay. Same with Montgomery. Montgomery could be great for you. But do I want him as a second running back? Here he's taken as the third running back. But insofar, Pierce is non-existent to me in a way. So he is technically the second running back here. As you can see, Joe just got a little bit upset with Brandon Cooks as his guy.
And Quentin Johnston, back to back. So challenge of playing on the turn right now.
And to speak too, Joe, is that I don't feel like my lineup here is any better because Olave, yes, while I think he's a great player, would I have rather had Chubb? Yeah, absolutely. I would rather have Chubb over Olave in that scenario. And on the comeback, getting a guy like DK Metcalf, the team would be strong. It's all about balance. And I think for those people that are going too heavy on the wide receiver or too heavy on other positions at the beginning here, it definitely creates a team that feels and looks unbalanced.
Yeah, because right now, I'm in a spot where I'm swinging for home runs, right? And yeah, you can make an argument your top 5 are the ones who are going to play anyway. But Kadarius Toney is always going to be on the field with Patrick Mahomes. Gabe Davis always going to be on the field with Josh Allen. There's an argument there. Neither one of them are particularly stellars as athletes on the field in terms of their – Kadarius Toney does not do good at route running. And neither does Gabe Davis. He basically runs a go route, and that's about it. So as I look here, it's such a handcuff. But the only real advantage I have is I know I have the quarterback spot I'm going to be leading most weeks. And the tight end spot I'm going to be competitive until Kittle gets hurt. And when I look at this and go – am I happy with my draft? Not really. But is it something that I'm going to be able to salvage the best of? Maybe. And that's if I win on the home runs. So on my next go-around, unless Bob takes them right here or on the comeback, I'm eyeing up 2 different players, one being Sky Moore and one being Higbee. Because Higbee's a volume man. And Sky Moore's the other receiver in Kansas City. And I think both of those guys are undervalued right now, particularly Sky Moore.
Yeah, the whole Kansas City wide receiver situation is going to be interesting to watch this offseason, particularly because they have been connected to DeAndre Hopkins. If DeAndre Hopkins goes to Kansas City, we've talked about this before, he's not going in the 4th round.
No.
You're not going to be able to get him there. He's probably going to go in the 3rd round, maybe top of the 3rd, maybe late 2nd, depending on how people value him. You could possibly see a stack of Kelsey, Hopkins, and Mahomes all coming down in that order. It's going to be a challenge if you decide to hitch your horse to Hopkins, because if you're drafting now in particularly, if you draft now and you take Hopkins, you are walking into an uncertain situation. And if he's sitting there as your wide receiver 1 or your wide receiver 2, you're a little bit concerned. Wide receiver 3, maybe not as concerned.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Bob. Is there any team Hopkins is going to sign with realistically where he's not going to be the immediate target, or at least at minimum the number 1 depth chart wide receiver?
No, I think that most of the places, even though he's a little bit older, if he goes to New England, he's definitely going to be over Juju. But I still think Juju is going to get a large amount of targets in that offense, just because of the way that Mac Jones plays, just because of the way Mac Jones throws the ball. And it looks like we're stalled a little bit here. I don't know what's happening. So I'm just going to queue up a couple of guys here, I guess, in case the queue is a little bit off. So as you can see, the draft stops. So if Hopkins ends up in Kansas City, Kadarius Toney is going to be an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
Same with I think Sky Moore in that offense. I think that offense will strictly run through Kelsey and Hopkins. There has been some conversation that Hopkins was tied to Carolina. That's not going to happen.
No, nor should Carolina want him.
Wouldn't make any sense. So logistically, the only 2 options are there. And the reason why Hopkins has yet to sign with, say, Kansas City is because Kansas City needs to restructure contracts to get him to be able to come there on the league minimum.
In a way, it almost reminds me of the way the LA Lakers got Shaq back in the day. So, Bob, this one has stalled out here, so we're just going to conclude this draft right here as it hit a little technical difficulty on the Sleeper app. And to conclude the thought of the overall message here is, I hate my team without with a passion. If I have to line up with Joe Mixon, Kamara, and then Robinson, who's essentially going to be splitting carries, or at least splitting time, not necessarily carries, that's not a foundation to build my team around. And I look at the receivers that I'm stuck with. I hate Kadarius Toney and Gabe Davis. So overall, I mean, sure, it's some bad luck, but more so what it really was everyone saw I didn't have a running back left, and they took the guys that they wanted at receiver and left me hung out to dry. And this is the example of why not to do this, why you need to take at least, in my opinion, 3, if not 4 running backs in the first 5 rounds.
Yeah, for my side of it, in the chat going on, there was, say, Olave was a reach and a half. We acknowledge that Olave is a reach and a half, but when it comes to reaches, if you're reaching on a guy that is still going to be productive in an offense, and it's something that you would want to have on your team, there are going to be points in time where you are going to have to reach to him. Olave's ADP is sitting at that 212 spot, that maybe even 3-2.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want him and you are drafting at the back half of that first round, so you're going to have an early second round pick, Olave is no better or worse than Waddle, no better or worse than Higgins. And I think this year will be on par with Devontae Adams. And so you're going to, if it's a guy you want, you have to take him because you're not going to get him on the comeback. Same with Devonta Smith. There's a lot of good stuff happening in Philadelphia offensively. And for Brown to be drafted at that point, I think Devonta Smith is just as valuable to you as a fantasy owner. This guy over here, Philly Jaboy, taking Chase, Waddle, and Smith, I think is an excellent group of 3 plus Kirk at the 4. But what I don't like about this is that you are getting uncertain production from both Pierce and Montgomery.
Yeah.
Pierce's situation, they have Singletary there. Now, we don't like Singletary, but there is reason to say that Singletary will get some touches.
Yeah, because there's reason to say that they gave up on Pierce because he didn't produce in the second half of the year.
Now, Pierce got hurt, but that's also to say that Pierce also got keyed on because he's the only respectable threat on their offense. And we have seen when teams key up on certain guys that that player becomes non-existent and therefore not a fantasy asset. And to have Dameon Pierce as your number 1 running back, well, although you have Waddle, Chase, and Smith to make up for that, you are hoping that Pierce more often booms than he does busts. And that's the damage that happens here when you go position players or without running backs early. Again, let's go to the King Gambit over on the other side. If these are you and you are watching, we're just talking about it just from a strictly an analytical standpoint. You know,
absolutely.
Nothing against you. So CeeDee Lamb, Wilson, and Ridley, that could be a deadly combination too. But Ridley
also could be 2 blanks.
Ridley has question marks. And we know that Aaron Rodgers keys in on certain guys on offense.
And he hates young players.
And so we're not really sure if Wilson's going to be his guy. We hope so. As a NFL fan, you hope that Wilson will be his guy because Wilson was electric last year. But do you want to...
Can I put a pause on the Wilson talk real quick?
I'm going to pause that. But I want to look at those 3 running backs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right? J.K. Dobbins coming back healthy. Yeah, of course.
Stud.
Absolutely. Love to have him.
Underrated.
Dalvin Cook is not going to be there when you are drafting, say, in August. So you can't get yourself locked in that back is going to be there.
No.
Cam Akers is slowly climbing up the board. So the more often you're taking 3 running backs, the more often that ADP is going to start to climb up. And when that ADP starts to climb up, what you're going to see happen is your regular Joe Schmoes in your home league taking Akers instead of in the 5th round, they're going to take him in the 4th round, maybe even in the 3rd round because they're saying, wow, this guy's really going up. They're ranking him pretty high. I'm going to take him. We all know that guy. We all are in leagues with those people that just draft off the board. And so he's not going to be there for you. And Madison isn't going to be there for you. His ADP has gone from probably round 8, which we've been doing mocks from there.
Yeah.
From round 8, now it's up at 5. And soon it's going to be up at 3.
And this is all the more reason to get solid backs early. Because at the end of the day, there is a plethora of receivers. Remember, any given play in the NFL, 1 running back on the field, 3 receivers. That means supply and demand, by definition, is a 3-to-1 ratio. Get the rare commodity first. Take the running back.